I feel like it's genuinely a pretty huge disadvantage for them to be up against a woman. Women are, after all, 50% of the vote in this country. I know it may be easy to forget that because when your political engagement online basically entirely comes down to you arguing with men, this one's kind of short and sweet, but this is a point that I really want to make because I think it's extremely important. I've said before that I think one of the biggest advantages that Kamala Harris is going to have as the presidential frontrunner is the fact that Republicans are extremely racist and sexist, and they will not be able to resist expressing that in the context of Kamala Harris, which will be to their detriment, both because they have a hard enough time getting racial minorities on their side as it is, that's one. And for two, women right now are an extremely mobilized political class because Roe v. Wade was overturned. These are a couple of like select tweets that I want you to look at. This is very trite. This is literally, let's look at sexist tweets from Republicans. Right now we're talking sexism, okay? It's more socially acceptable to be sexist than it is to be racist, you know? Like, you all know that. We understand this intuitively. Just a few that I saw, you know? Give it to me straight. How long will it take to blow 51% of America? Now, we know that the right is obsessed with the idea that every woman on the left got to where she is by sucking dick. They did this with everyone. They've done this with AOC. They've done this with Ilhan Omar. They've done this with Hillary Clinton. They've done this with Pelosi, which is crazy because she's like 1 million years old. They probably did it with Dianne Feinstein, even though she's 2 million. Well, now she's dead. Unlike the actual throat goat Nancy Reagan. Yeah, no kidding. Either way, it's weird because it doesn't make any sense. I don't know about you guys. Kamala Harris does not come across as even remotely horny at all. Like even slightly. AOC has that video of her dancing as a college student and she wears red lipstick, I guess. I don't think either of those are innately sexual. I think they're adjacent to sexual attraction. They're things people do to kind of like signal attraction sometimes. So you can read that and go like, oh, she's like a hot bitch. Now, is AOC a hot bitch? Yes. Is Kamala Harris a hot bitch? Sure. But Kamala Harris does not do anything even remotely like, I don't know, what's the right term here? Sexual isn't the right term. It's like she doesn't do anything alluring, but I'm not saying that as an insult. I just mean there's nothing about her character that comes across to me as, yeah, like suggestive at all. Again, I don't mean that as an insult. Just basically what I'm trying to say is she is reaching like crazy. They are reaching like crazy to attack her over this. By the way, they do it a lot. Kamala Harris should put out a statement, Huck to oh my God, Sean, you're savage, had to. This one's so embarrassing, I don't even like looking at it. Oh, here's George Alexopoulos. This is the guy who did the Biden You Ain't White comic, and then since then has done 50 comics where he draws himself as a 4-foot-tall gremlin man sexually assaulting women, and then the women like it. All that work for nothing, says a guy with a Bussin' for Biden shirt, which is a good shirt. And then Kamala says, never give up. Let me show you how it's done. And then she attempts to deep throat the Washington Monument. This is insane, right? Like, can you imagine where your mind would have to be at to arrive at this? It's a total non sequitur. You might as well go at this from like Biden's perspective. Like Biden might as well be the guy trying to like deep throat the, what's even the point? The point is that Kamala Harris is a woman, so she sucks dick. That's it. That's the level of imagination. But I still think it's indicative of something here, right? Like when presented, like think of this from the Republican perspective, okay? So George Alexopoulos is unabashedly partisan. He is right wing. He's a fascist, right? From his perspective, the future of the country, and maybe even the white race, hinges on Donald Trump winning. A massive pivotal election is coming up. Joe Biden drops out and he's been replaced with Kamala Harris. This is like the fight of a lifetime. His neurons are firing. How do I, a partisan comic artist, engage with this in a way that serves my interest? And this is what he came up with. I really do think that the reflexive sexism of Republicans is going to consistently get in the way of their ability to attack Kamala Harris. Do you think women seeing this are going to be particularly moved towards the Republican Party? And what might Nick Fuentes' comment towards Harris be? Well, I think if anything, that's actually indicative. The Groyper movement is, and I'm speaking charitably here, 100% unfaithful men. It might be 101% unfaithful men. Now, historically, fascism has basically always been kind of bedrocked by men, but there were plenty of women Nazis. You might ask yourself, why are there basically no women Nazis? You might be able to think of some grifter like public figures, and I can too. But in terms of the general electorate, like the regular median voter, if you take a look at the breakdown of people's positions and perspectives, there are very, very, very few far-right women. Regular voters. Do you think Candace Owens has a female audience? Do you think Melanie Mack has a female audience? No, they have male audiences. So why are there basically no women on the far right? My suggestion is that the reason for this is because the far right is performatively hateful towards women to the extent that they basically can't even join the movement. You know? The Proud Boys is a men's only club, like by name, you know? A gentleman's club, they call it. They despise women. One of the most effective ways that you build a far-right political group is by appealing to incels. This is literally something Steve Bannon explicitly tried to do. Unfaithful young men tend to be emotionally fragile and hateful and resentful, and it's pretty easy to pull them in one direction or another. So given all of that, I feel like it's genuinely a pretty huge disadvantage for them to be up against a woman. Women are, after all, 50% of the vote in this country. I know it may be easy to forget that because when your political engagement online basically entirely comes down to you arguing with men, which it does, by the way. My audience is like 92% men, though given the fact that YouTube's gender statistics don't really track whether or not people transition, and sometimes it feels like half my community is trans women, I don't actually know. It might just be half my VGG chat is trans women and the broader like YouTube watcher community is, you know what I mean. The online political engagement is overwhelmingly a men's game, not because women don't care about politics, but to be fair, you have to be kind of a little bit of a masochistic to get involved in politics online. I'm speaking from my own perspective here. I'm speaking to yours. You aren't the exception. You're included in this. You kind of have to be a little bit. You guys could be jerking off or playing like, you know, the high, like Payday with your friends, you know, you could be on Fortnite. And here you are watching a politics streamer. You're crazy, dude. You all get the point that I'm making here, right? This stuff does not work to their benefit. I mean, much to this point right here. JD Vance says Kamala Harris is a childless cat lady who is miserable with her life because she doesn't have children. I'm not going to look into the article. I saw him say this in this interview. Literally, like, you're a woman, why aren't you in the kitchen? You know, this is the VP. Literally, like, doesn't she call herself Mamala? I mean, she is all of our mothers. Also, yeah, does she not does she have, I don't actually know, because I don't look at a woman and think like I need to know whether or not she has children. I don't really give a shit. I don't actually know whether she has kids. She has stepchildren? That counts as having kids, though it might not to the right. Yeah, Cole and Ella, her two stepchildren. These insults are not going to land well with the female voter. Oh, I saw this one as well. What does this even mean, man? How it started to how it's going. And it's Kamala giving the Joe a blow. How much of a porn addict do you have to be? Like, genuinely, you're like a degenerate porn addict to be thinking this. It's offensive. It is offensive, but it's not offensive because it's like, I would be less offended if a porn artist drew like, here's my drawing of Kamala Harris and she's got like huge tits and a 4-inch waist or something. Like, I don't like, if somebody did that, I would think it's funny, you know, like, oh yeah, I'm coconut pilled and it's Kamala Harris like with 2 big coconuts in front of her tits. We're like, okay, whatever. Like, you know, that this is like an expected outcome. This is like genuinely psychotic. This is serial killer behavior. I only picked a few tweets, by the way. Like, there's a ton of this stuff. If you go under the comments of basically any Republican post on Kamala Harris, anything that's about her like laugh or anything about her as a person, not about her political record, there are a huge number of unfavorable like middle-aged divorced dads who take selfies in their trucks with the shades on, you know, like talking about her in like a really disgusting sexual way, you know? And Women are the one minority that are equally proportioned in every state, except for Alaska, you know? In every other type of minority, basically, is kind of like unevenly distributed. As we know, all the trans people are in Seattle, Chicago, and New York City. Racial minorities are distributed in a wide variety of ways. But when it comes to gender, with the exception of Alaska, like that's pretty much like evenly spaced. So why wouldn't Alaska have an even amount of women? Because a lot of people only move up to Alaska for seasonal work in fishing or in drilling. And those people are almost always men. I think Alaska has like 55-45 in terms of men, women. Alaska gender ratio. Yes, in Alaska, there are 110 men for every 100 women, which is a pretty significant difference. That's more of a gender imbalance than, say, for example, China, which has a significant imbalance. The difference, of course, being that that's all of China with its 1.4 billion people, whereas Alaska, usually the men like go back to other. That's horrifying. Yeah, Alaska also has a lot of rape. Let's not think about it. Can you explain how Christian conservatives are so obsessed with sex and porn? Because conservatism, the conservative ideology does not allow for women to be people. The entire red pill movement, every conservative political movement that talks about women talks about them as anything other than people. They're incubators for children, there's child rearers, they're trophies that hang off the arms of men as a symbol of status. From the red pill perspective, they're simple, semi-human animal creatures that are very easily triggered by or like excited by certain inputs that you can factor in. They're not really like people with complex desires. They're consequences of evolutionary psychology that can be exploited for their resource, which is pussy. None of these ideologies really factor in women being people, like humans, you know? And as a consequence of that, if they're not people, then they're usually sex objects. The less of a person a woman is, the easier it is to just reflexively sexualize them, which is why you see stuff like this. I don't think a normal, healthy human mind could ever produce this. I think a normal, healthy human mind could produce like a funny drawing of Kamala Harris with coconuts held up in front of her tits, because I think that you can do that in a kind of like, you know, half because Kamala Harris is like a hot mom and half because, you know, it's like funny. This, to me, there's nothing erotic about it. It's meant to be demeaning. The only point of this is Kamala Harris is a woman, therefore she is like blowing dicks to the top. It's not meant to elicit arousal, it's meant to put her down. And I don't think a healthy mind would ever reflexively defer to that without any supporting evidence. There's no evidence that Kamala Harris gave head to get to where she is. If there was a political candidate who was like, I don't know, obviously sleeping their way to the top, something which is basically never proven, by the way. There are plenty of corrupt politicians who don't deserve to be where they are. Most of them are men, and nobody ever goes, oh, you f***ed your way to the top. Do people really think that blowjobs are so rare and so in demand in the market these days that you can become a vice president by giving them? Are you a joke? Like, are you kidding? You think that any of the people Kamala Harris might have hypothetically given head to couldn't have gotten it from any other source and in infinitely like higher quality and quantity? Are you suggesting perhaps that Kamala Harris is the best dick sucker on earth? Like, they just want to demean women, you know? And it's not even funny. Look, if you're demeaning women and you've got a good joke lined up, that's one thing. If you can sling a good joke, then all right. But unless she knows the grapefruit technique, yeah, maybe. Kamala's already being called a DEI hire, which just make Republicans look like terminally online freaks. Oh man. Oh, from a rep too. Oh man, it's not even like a state senator or whatever.
Question to a Republican congressman, Tim Burchett of Tennessee, about the fact that they would be going up against someone who would be the first black South Asian woman who could be president of the United States, and what that means for the Republican campaign.
Biden said, first off,
by the way, I just want to point out, no matter who Kamala Harris picks as her vice president, the VP would literally be a DEI hire because it's going to be a white guy. Joe Biden was literally a DEI hire under Obama. Obama won because he was insanely charismatic. They needed a white guy to bounce him out. The DEI hires here are in the opposite direction, to appeal to the moderates and conservatives who are uncomfortable with purely woman or POC power. Like unironic, everyone knows, even Republicans admit, yeah, like Joe Biden was the white guy, the like token white guy to bounce him out. Yeah, whoever this VP pick is going to be like a fancy dry white or whatever. It's insane, dude. Them's the DEI hires.
He said he's going to hire a black female for vice president, and that he just skipped over. What about white females? What about any other group?
Look at that atrocious suit fit, dude. How do you have this shit? But do you have the wrong button in the wrong buttonhole? How the f are you just standing up straight with the suit buttoned and you have the lapel slacking on one side? What is this? I didn't even know it was, but this is like a new suit up. Loser.
Just when you go down that route,
look at that.
You take mediocrity, and that's what they have right now as a vice president.
So are you suggesting she was a DEI hire?
100%. She was a DEI hire. He said he was going to hire, and she didn't. Her record is abysmal at best.
We know that
notice how much Republicans want to talk on her being black and a woman, but when they want to like diversify, when they want to add a little bit of DEI to their argument, they're like, yeah, her record's bad, and then they don't elaborate. They're like, yeah, her record's bad. Also, she's black. Goodbye. You know, what do you got to say, man?
as a former prosecutor, she can prosecute the case against a convicted felon and make the case to the American people that she is really primed and ready to take over as the leader of our country.
And that last Congressman Dan Golden, a Democrat from New York, expressing what a lot of other Democrats are saying. They believe that she can draw a sharper contrast with Donald Trump than Joe Biden was able to, also to bolster.
All right. How long until one of them pops out the N-word? I am not joking when I say that I genuinely think the popularization of the term DEI was deliberately invoked as a way of preventing people from saying the N-word. I'm not even kidding. I think the desire for a bunch of Republican politicians, pundits, and what have yous to just say the N-word is getting greater and greater, and they want a term that you can reflexively defer to without saying it. Mike Bloomberg urges Democrats not to rush presidential pick. The future's now, old man. Shut the f*** up. You had your chance. Donate $1 billion to the Future Forward PAC, you stupid weasel. You're dead soon anyway. Get your money in there.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but
true.
It's good.
They love being called racist, dude. They love it. They want it so badly. I'll call you a freak for liking Diet Mountain Dew. Hold on. Someone linked this right before I started. Okay, so this is a Nazi account. Goyish eyes realize real lies. Paraphrasing, what's his name? Not Jackson Smith. What's his name? What's Will Smith's kid's name? Jaden Smith, that's right. As a white supremacist, ironic.
So I think...
This is Peter Thiel, by the way. This sweaty, golem-looking motherfucker with the sunken eyes, who genuinely looks like he's about to shoot up the building. This is Peter Thiel, a billionaire, tech mogul, and one of the people spending a lot of money to make sure you don't get to vote in 2028.
In the case of Palantir specifically, I think when I was doing research online, a lot of the criticisms that people want to make about Palantir is the idea that the technology that Palantir produces is used to crack down on individual liberty. So often the examples that people use to make this criticism is the idea of the example of policing departments across the US, or even with the protests outside the contracts with the IDF. And how do you...
It's always the most like dysgenic, non-functional inability to withstand the sunlight freaks who build movements based on the innate superiority of their biology. Look at this guy.
In your position and as involved in Palantir, how do you navigate that balance between governments and technology?
He's being asked questions in AI. Okay, listen to these answers.
So determined. You mentioned you wouldn't be...
We're just looking at his behavior here, not the answers.
You mentioned you wouldn't be supporting Donald Trump. Would that change if he selected J.D. Vance as his vice presidential candidate?
Man, I'm always tempted to go back. I am so determined to try to stay out of it, but I think I'm not going to make an announcement of my political intentions here at Cambridge today. So, you know, I think Trump will win. I think that.
Remember, guys, this guy's literally one of the like grand architects of this country's demise. This one's even worse. Listen to this. He's asked a question about Israel.
So what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence or lavender by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets? And secondly, do you agree with Elon Musk about that the population decline?
Are all tech billionaires like this? He's so Elon coded? Yes, because they were like uncharismatic wits who got bullied in school, and once they ended up lucking out in investment, because they're never actually tech guys, they're always like tech investment guys, they're always like venture capitalists in the tech industry. Once they get a fuck ton of money, they're like, now that I've made a bunch of money, which is divine evidence of my superiority over others, I will use my power to get back at all the chads who bullied me in high school. And then like that usually translates into some kind of like weird megalomaniacal desire for attention. Elon does it, Peter Thiel does it. They both ended up following the same basic path. Peter Thiel probably thinks himself smarter than Elon Musk, which to be fair is an extremely low bar. He's certainly not more charismatic. Listen to this.
Decline is a risk for humanity.
Look, I'm not, you know, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to.
A lot of Nazis like this guy, by the way. So him being asked a question on like Israel's use of AI and him flubbing and going like, I listen to Israel, I stand with Netanyahu, is incredibly funny.
To second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right, and that's sort of the perspective I come back to. And if I fall into the trap of arguing you on every detailed point, I would actually be conceding the broader issue that the Middle East should be micromanaged from Cambridge, and I think that's just.
Did he just say my bias is to side with Israel? Yes.
Simply absurd, and so I'm not going to concede that point.
This is the guy who made J.D. Vance. Isn't he the guy who funded Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker? Yes. Peter Thiel wrote that women getting the vote was bad for democracy. Not surprising. Again, like mediocre men end up like growing into these, but like, yeah, the pattern repeats every time, man. Isn't Peter Thiel gay? Another like very funny fact. Another thing adding to the pile. Up to 101 million as of 3 p.m. EDT. Holy shit. Jesus Christ, man. I'm feeling a little hopeful.